This is Mr. L. Anthony Karoxin, Assistant Professor from TSM College of Engineering and Technology in Tirunelveli. And in this video, we are going to discuss about the construction techniques, equipments, and practices.
As from the name itself, we can know that we are going to see about the techniques that are used in construction, the equipments that are used, and the practices that are followed in the construction techniques. And in this video, we are going to see about substructure construction. In the substructure construction, we are going to see foundation types, piles, well and caisson, sinking cofferdam, cable anchoring, grouting, dividing diaphragm walls, shoring for deep cutting, well points, tiles, and the materials for finish in residential and commercial and industrial floors. Now we can see one by one. First we are going to see about foundation. As we all know that what is foundation, the structure which is in direct contact with the ground is known as foundation. It transfers a load of the structure of the soil below so to avoid overloading of the soil beneath. It also increases stability of the structure by taking the structure deep into the ground. It prevents the differential settling by evenly loading the substrata. It provides a level surface for the building materials. The selection of materials and the type of foundation depends upon the types of structure and the nature of underlying soil. The foundation are generally built with bricks, stones, concrete, steel, etc. The foundation shall be designed to be capable of being constructed economically and without risk. And now we are going to see about the types of foundation. The major types of foundation are open or shallow foundation, and the other one is deep foundation. In open or shallow foundation, there are 6 types of footings, which is known as wall footing or strip footing. Second one is isolated spread footing. Third one is combined footing. Fourth one is cantilever footing. Fifth one is grillage footing. Sixth one is raft footing. And in deep foundation, there are 3 types of footing. One is pile foundation. Second one is pier foundation. Third one is caisson foundation. Now we can see one by one. First one is wall footing or strip footing. The wall footing is also known as continuous footing. It runs along the direction of the wall. The type of foundation is used to distribute loads at the structural or non-structural load-bearing walls to the ground in such a way that the load-bearing limit of the soil is performed. It is a continuous slab stripping along the length of the wall. Stone, bricks, reinforced concretes are all used for the construction of wall foundation. We can say the wall foundation is economical when the load is transmitted or of same magnitude and it's placed on the dense sand and gravel. This is the typical representation of the wall footing or strip footing. And second, we are going to see about isolated spread footing. This is the most widely recognized and most straightforwardly used shallow foundation type because of its most economical one. Comparing to all the footings, it's somewhat most economical, so it's widely used and recognized. And they are typically utilized for the shallow establishment to convey and spread concentrated burdens by the pillars or columns. Generally, they are used for the ordinary buildings, typically up to 5 stories. This type of isolated footing comprises a foundation directly at the base of the segment. Generally, every section has its footing, so it might be rectangular, square, and roundabout. This is the pictorial representation of the isolated spread footing. Next, we are going to see about the combined footing. As from the name itself, we can know it's when 2 footings are nearby, they are combined to each other. So this is known as the combined footing. It's very similar to the isolated footing. When the columns of the structure are carefully placed or the bearing capacity of the soil is low and the footings overlap each other, combined footing is provided. So the foundation which are made common or more than one columns is called as a combined footing. And we can say the combined footing is economical when the columns are placed close to each other and the column is close to the property line and the isolated footing would cross the property line or become eccentric, and the dimension of one of the side of the footing are restricted to some lower value. And this is a representation of combined footing. And the second image represents the strap footing. Next we are going to see about the cantilever or strap footing. The cantilever footing is also similar to the combined footing, and the reason for considering or choosing the strap footing are identical to the combined one. And the foundation under the column is built individually and connected by a strap. If the two columns are nearby each other, they are connected by a strap, and this is also equal to the strap footing. This is the typical representation of the cantilever or strap footing, in which the two columns are connected by a strap. Next we are going to see about the raft or mat foundation. If more than 5 or 7 columns are placed near to each other, we can use the raft foundation. So they are used to where other shallow or pile foundations are not possible. It's also recommended in situation where the bearing capacity of soil is inadequate. The load of the structure is to be distributed over a large area, or a structure is subjected to continuously shock or jerks. And it is economical when we use the raft foundation. So these are the conditions to be satisfied. So the soil is weak and the load has to be spread over a large area. The structure includes a basement. The columns are closely placed, and other kinds of foundation are not visible. Differential settlement is to be prevented. So then only the raft foundation will be economical. This is a typical representation of the raft or mat foundation. Now we are going to see about the deep foundations. In deep foundation, first we are going to see about pile foundations. It's a kind of foundation is actually slender column or a long column made of materials such as concrete or steel that are used to support the structure and transfer the load at desired depth, either by end bearing or skin friction. And if the breadth of the pile is less than that of the 3 times of the depth, it's known as pile foundation. And the pile foundations are usually used for the large structures and in situations where the soil at shallow depth is not possible to resist excessive settlement and to resist uplift. And when to use the pile foundation and where to use the pile foundation. If the ground table water is high, we can use the pile foundation. If the loads such as heavy or ununiform loads from the superstructures are imposed, we can use pile foundation. If other piles of foundation are costlier or can be not used, we can use pile foundation. If soil is shallow depth is incompressible, we can use pile foundation. If there is a possibility of scoring due to its local near the riverbed or seashore, we can use pile foundation. When the soil excavation is not possible up to desired depth due to the poor soil conditioning, we can use pile foundation. And when there is a canal or a deep drainage system near the structure, we can use pile foundation. And when it becomes impossible to keep the foundation trenches dry by pumping or by any other measure due to the heavy inflow of seepage, we can use pile foundation. And there are some types of pile foundations are used. Majorly there are 2 types based on the function or use and based on the materials and construction methods. Based on function or used, there are 5 types of foundation. There are sheet piles, load bearing piles, end bearing piles, friction piles, and soil capacitor piles. And based on the materials and construction methods, there are 4 types of pile foundations. One is timber piles, second one is concrete piles, third one is steel piles, and fourth one is composite piles. Now we can see one by one. By the classification of pile foundation based on function or use, first we are going to see about steel piles. This type of piles is most commonly used to resist lateral support They are usually resist lateral pressure from the loose soil. They are usually used for coffer dams, trench sheetings, shore protection, etc. They are not used for providing vertical support to the structure. They are used for the construction of retaining walls, protection from riverbank erosion, for isolation of foundation from adjacent soil, and to retain the loose soil around the foundation trenches. The next one we are going to see is load bearing piles. It is a type of pile mainly used for transfer of vertical load from the structure to the soil. These foundation transmit loads through the soil with poor supporting property onto a layer which is capable of bearing the load. Depending upon the mechanism of load transfer from the pile to the soil, load bearing piles can be further classified. Next we are going to see about the end bearing piles. It is a type of pile where the load from the lower tip of the pile it's passed through the lower tip. The bottom end of the pile rests on a strong layer of the soil or rock. Usually the pile resists at a transition layer of a weak or strong layer. Next we are going to see the friction pile. It's a pile which used to transfer the load from the structure of the soil by the frictional force between the surface of the pile and the surrounding area of the pile, such as stiff clay, sandy soil, etc. The friction is developed for the entire length of the pile or a definite length of the pile depending on the state of the soil. In this type of pile, generally the entire surface of the pile transfers the load from the structure to the soil. The surface area of the pile multiplied by a safe friction force developed per unit area determines the capacity of the soil. Upon the capacity, we can determine how many piles to be used and how much area it be used, and the load capacity can be determined. Next we are going to see about the soil compaction piles. These piles are driven at the placed closed intervals to increase the bearing capacity of soil by compacting method. Next we are going to see about the classification of piles based on the materials and the construction method. First we are going to see about the timber piles. The timber piles are placed under the water level. They last for approximately 30 years. The timber piles can be rectangular or circular in shape, which we are using. The timber piles diameter or size can vary from 12 to 16 inches. The length of the pile is usually 20 times to the width. They are usually designed for 15 to 20 tons, and the additional strength can be obtained by bolting fish plates to the side of the pile. And now we are going to see about the advantages of the timber pile. The timber pile of regular size are available. It's economical. It's easy to install. It has a low possibility of damage. It can be cut off to any desired length after they are installed. If necessary, the timber piles can be easily pulled out. So it's somewhat economical and easily used. If there is any advantages, there are also a disadvantage. So we are going to now see about the disadvantage of timber. The piles of longer length is not always available. So it's somewhat a fixed length or somewhat short length is available. So longer length is not available. That's one of the drawback. And it's difficult to obtain straight piles if the length is short. It is difficult to drive the pile if the soil state is very hard. If it's very hard, the timber piles is not used. The spicing of timber piles is also difficult. It's not suitable to be used as a end bearing pile. The timber or wooden piles are not used as a end bearing pile. For the duration of timber pile, special measures have to be taken. For example, wooden piles are often treated with preservatives so that only they can be used as a pile. Next we are going to see about the concrete piles. As from the name itself we can know they are using the concrete as a pile. So in this concrete pile there are two two methods, that is precast concrete piles and the post-cast concrete piles. In the precast concrete piles, the pile bed is in horizontal form if they are rectangular in shape, and usually circular pipes are cast in vertical forms. The precast piles are usually reinforced with steel to prevent the breakage during its mobilization from the casting bed to the location of the foundation. And after the piles are cast, curing to be performed as per the specification given. Generally, curing period of the precast piles is up to 21 to 28 days. And the advantages of precast piles: it provides high strength to the chemical and biological cracks, and it facilitated driving. A pipe may be installed along the center of the pile. They are usually of high strength. The quality of pipe can also be controlled. The confinement of the reinforcement can be ensured. If any fault is identified in the precast piles, it can be replaced before driving. So it's one of the most advantage. So it can be driven under the water. And the disadvantages of precast piles are: once the length of the pile is decided, it is difficult to increase or decrease the length of the pile afterwards. It is precast means precasted, so it can't be shortened or it can be lengthened after the precasting has been done, and it is difficult to mobilize. It is somewhat difficult to transport from one place to another, as it is precast piles, and it need heavy and expensive equipment to driving the piles. So much heavy equipment is used, so its cost will get increased by using these sort of precast piles. As they are not available for ready-made purchases, it can cause a delay in the project. So project will get delayed due to the unavailability of the ready-made purchases. There is also a possibility of breakage or damage during handling and driving of piles. Next, we are going to see about the cast in place concrete piles. This type of piles is constructed by boring of soil up to the desired depth and then depositing freshly mixed concrete in that place and let it cure there. This type of piles is constructed either by driving a metallic shell to the ground and filling it with the concrete, and you leave the shell with the concrete, or the shell is pulled out while concreting is poured. And there are some advantages of the cast in place concrete piles. They are light weighted and they are easy to handle. The length of the piles can be varied easily. The shells may be assembled at site, and no excess enforcement is required, only to prevent the damage from handling. And there is no possibility of breakage during installation. But in the precast concrete piles, there is a possibility of breakage, so that's a disadvantage in that precast piles. But comparing to the cast in place concrete piles, there is no possibility of breakage, and additional piles can be provided easily if required. If any additional piles is required, we can easily provide in case of the cast in place concrete piles, but compared to precast piles, we can do that. And these sort of cast in place concrete piles also having a disadvantage: installation requires careful supervision and quality control. In precast concrete piles means it will be precast in a fabricated in the industry, so it will be under careful supervision. But in case of the cast into place concrete piles, it is not possible, so it's a disadvantage. And it's need sufficient place on site for storage of materials used for the construction. It is difficult to construct cast in situ piles where the underground water flow is heavy. If there is the flow water is heavy, means we can't use these sort of piles. And the bottom of piles may be symmetrical. If the piles is unreinforced or uncased, the pile can fail in tension if there acts and uplift forcing. The next type of pile is sheet piles. Sheet piles may be of high section or hollow pipes they are filled with concrete. It may vary from sizes from 10 inches to 24 inches in diameter, and thickness of these sheet piles is usually 3 by 4 inch. Because of the small section piles, the piles are easy to drive, and they are mostly used as a end bearing pile. And now we are going to see about the advantages of steel piles. The steel piles are easy to install. They can reach the greater depth comparing to any other types of piles, such as concrete piles or timber piles. Comparing to all the piles, steel piles are somewhat easier and can reach the greater depth by injecting into the ground, and can penetrate through the hard layers of the soil due to the less cross-section area. As it's having the less cross-section area, it will penetrate somewhat easier compared to the other types of piles that are used. And easy to splice steel piles, and it can carry heavy loads. Coming to the disadvantage of these steel piles, it's prone to corrosion. As this is steel, it will easily corrode, and it's somewhat a disadvantage for the steel pile. And has a possibility of deviating while driving, as it's a steel pile and can be driven somewhat faster, so it can deviate. So it should be carefully driven, and it's comparatively expensive. As this is steel, so it's somewhat expensive, so it's also a drawback for the steel pile. These are the piles that are erected in the ground. Now we are going to see about the Kaizen foundation. Kaizen foundation is nothing but it's a watertight retaining structure. It's used as a bridge pier, constructed of the dam, etc. It's generally used in structure where they require foundation beneath the river or similar water bodies. The reason for choosing the Kaizen is to be floated to a desired location and then sunk into place. We can say that the Kaizen foundation is economical when the pile cap required to be minimized, and the noise and vibration need to be reduced, and it has to be placed beneath the water bodies. And there are three types of Kaizens. One is open Kaizens or well, and second one is box Kaizens, and the third one is pneumatic Kaizen. We can see one by one. Open Kaizens are wells. This is a type of Kaizen which are open at both the top and bottom. They are used on sandy or soft bearing stratum, and they are generally built of timber, metal, reinforced concrete, and or masonry. These are the shapes of the wells, that is circular, rectangular, double D, and rectangular with D shaped ends, twin hexagonal, and two octagonal shapes. And now we are going to see the components of the wells and what are the functions they are doing. First, we are going to see about the cutting edge. The cutting edge provides a comparatively sharp edge to cut the soil below during the singing operation. When it's allowed to sing, it will cut the soil that will pave the way for the equipment to go down. And next one is curb. The function of the curb is it has a two-fold purpose. During the singing, it acts as an extension edge and also provides a support to the well stain and bottom plug, while after singing, it transfers the load to the soil. Staining is the most and main body of the well. The function is to serve the dual purpose. It acts as a comfort dam during singing and structural member to the load of the soil after. The next one is bottom plug. The main function of the bottom plug is to transfer the load from the staining to the soil below. Next one is sand filling. The function of the sand filling is to afford some relief to the staining by transferring directly a portion of the load from the well cap to the bottom plug. Next, we are going to see about the top plug. It serves as a shuttering for the layer of the well cap. Next, reinforcement. It provides requisite strength to the structure during sinking and service. And next one is well cap. It is to transfer the loads and moments from the pier of the wall or the wells below. And there are some problems in well sinking. The first one is sand blowing. The trouble of sand blowing takes place during the process of dewatering of the well, passing through the sandy strata. Next one is tilting of well. It is a major problem in the wells. When the well sinks, more on one side and then on the other side, it is known to have tilted. The tilting is mainly due to the unequal dredging and non-uniform bearing power of the soil. And following methods are used for the well to be tilted in position. One is control of dredging, second is eccentric loading, third is water jetting, fourth is pulling in the well, fifth is pushing by jacks, the next is use of explosives such as and next is deposition of earth on one side and excavation on the other, and the final is providing temporary obstacle below the cutting edge. First we are going to see about the shifting of wells. The shifts change span length and thereby induce eccentric load on the well staining and foundation. The magnitude of the ill effects depend upon the size of the well and depth to which it sinks. If a simple tilt occurs at a certain depth and the sinking continues till design foundation depth is reached, the shift at the bottom could be reach the top of the well. These are the following precautions to be taken to avoid the tilts and shift during the sinking operations. They are: if the outer surface of the well curb and the staining should be regular and smooth as possible, the radius of the curb should be kept up to 2 to 4 cm larger than the outer radius of the well staining. The cutting edge of the curb should be uniform in thickness and sharpness. The dredging should be done uniformly. The next caisson is box caisson. The box caisson is open at top and closed at bottom. In case of well caisson, that is opened at both top and bottom, but in case of the box caisson, it's open at the top and it's closed at the top. It's closed at the bottom. It's merely a variation of the suspended type cofferdam. It's built of reinforced concrete, steel or timber. And next we are going to see about the pneumatic caissons. It's a caisson which is open at bottom and closed at the top. It's a controversy of the box caisson. It's useful at location where it's not possible to adapt well caissons, and they are suitable when the depth of the water is more than 12 meter, and the maximum depth of water up to the pneumatic caisson can be used is limited to the consideration of the health of the workers. And this method, the compressed air is used to remove from the working chamber, and the foundation work is carried out in dry condition, and they can be made of timber, steel, etc. Next we are going to see about the cofferdams. Cofferdams are nothing but the temporary structures. They are designed to exclude both surface water and groundwater from the excavation area. In the excavation area, there are some waters that will be indulged. They must be removed by using the method called cofferdams. They provide an impermeable structure around the periphery of this construction area, resulting in relatively dry workspace. And we are going to see about the requirement of the cofferdam. It should be reasonably watertight. The total cost of the construction, maintenance and pumping, it should be to be minimum, and it should be generally constructed at the site of work. It should be planned so as to facilitate and the dismantling and reuse of the materials. As the material is to be reused, it should be well planned and to be facilitated. And there are some types of cofferdams. Now you can see that. First one is earth-filled cofferdam. Second one is rock-filled cofferdam. Third one is rock-filled crib cofferdam. Fourth one is single water cofferdam. Fifth one is double wall cofferdam, and the final one is cellular cofferdam. This is the imagical representation of the cofferdam. And now we are going to see about the selection of cofferdam. In which area we can select the cofferdam, and what are the possibilities and the conditions to be used for the selection of the cofferdam. The extent of area to be protected by a cofferdam, and the depth of the water is also a major factor to be considered while selection of the cofferdam. The velocity of flowing water is also be considered while selection of the cofferdam, and the nature of bed on which the cofferdam is to rest is also a major factor to be noticed, and the availability of construction materials in the vicinity of the site of the work It's also one of the main one, because if the construction material is not available, it has to be purchased from different area, and the transportation will be getting higher. So it should be also be avoided. And the transportation available facility is also available for the selection of the coffer dam. And next we are going to see about the cable anchoring. Anchors are constructed at location around each caisson. At anchor locations, soil bearing are carried out by using rotary percussion type drilling equipments. These type of drilling equipments are used for the cable anchoring. And the construction of the cable anchoring is done at the location by using a standard size of casing pipes, which is of diameter 135 mm, and the length of the pipe is 1500 mm, and they have a thread on both sides, and the soil drilling was done by the rotatory percussion type drilling equipments. And next one is grouting. It's nothing but the injection the cement materials into the cracks, thereby filling the voids in the soil. So it's a process of injecting the cement materials into the cracks and seams of the rocks or voids into the soil. Its main aim is to strengthen and make the rock of the soil to watertight and monolithic, and it has been successfully used in stopping the leakage from the rocks. Usually cement Portland ground is useful for a crack up to 1.6 mm width. So this is the representation of the grouting method that is used in the rocks and the soils to fill the gaps. And in the grouting there are two methods. They are cement grouting and by using chemical process or chemical grouting. As in the name itself we can know, cement grouting, it's a mixture of cement, sand, water as used, and the number of holes are drilled in the ground in the cement grouting, and they are filled by the cement grout under pressure. The grouting is continued till no grout comes through the hole. So by using this sort of cement, sand and water, the gaps is to be filled, and when there is no grouting till comes out, it should be continued. And the next one is chemical grouting. From the name itself we can know that some chemicals are used for the grouting, such as sodium silicon and calcium chloride. And there are some types of chemical groutings, that is inorganic chemicals and organic chemicals. This is a grouting method which is used by the both chemical as well as cement grouting. And next we are going to see about the diaphragm wall. It's a wall that are underground structural elements commonly used for retenting systems and permanently foundation walls. And this diaphragm walls mostly used as a deep groundwater barrier. And the technique used for the diaphragm walls is slurry trench technique. And there are two methods that are adapted. That is a cast in place diaphragm wall, and another one is precast diaphragm wall. The name itself we know, the precast diaphragm walls, this means it will be casted before the construction process, which is means it will be erected and it will be constructed and fabricated in the industry. And cast in place diaphragm walls, it will be constructed on the site. First we are going to see about the cast in place diaphragm wall. Initially, for the cast in place diaphragm wall, the trench is being excavated in discontinuous sections or panels, and the stop and pipes are placed vertically at each end of the primary panel to form the joints for adjusting secondary panel. Then a steel reinforcement cage is placed in the center of the panel. The concrete is poured in one of the continuous operation through one or more trim pipes that extend to the bottom of the trench. Then the slurry that is displaced with the concrete is saved and for subsequent panel excavations. The finished wall may be cantilever or required anchors or for props for lateral supports. The next one is precast diaphragm wall. In this precast diaphragm wall, a continuous trench or long panel is excavated under self-hardening cement. There we can use a bentonite slurry. This slurry is retarded to remain fluid during construction, and the cement bentonite slurry sets to form the final composite wall and after sufficient length of excavation is complete, a crane lifts the precast wall section into the trench. And while doing this, alternatively, the trench is excavated under bentonite slurry, which is then displaced with cement bentonite slurry. And there are some applications that are used. It's used in congested areas, in close proximities to existing structure with minimal loss of support to existing foundation. So these are the applications of the foundations of using the diaphragm wall. So the diaphragm wall is a technique, is a true construction method which provides unequal support of existing structures during adjacent construction operations. So this is the representation of the diaphragm wall. Next we are going to see about the sheet piles. The sheet piles are nothing but that are walls that are constructed by driving the sheets in the slope or excavation. They are considered to be most economical where retention of higher earth pressure of the soil or soft soil is required. Their most common use is within the temporary deep excavation, and the sheets are in the range of 10 to 15 mm thickness, and they are driven into the soil to provide support during the excavation. Each sheet is joined to the adjacent sheet by means of an interlocking joint. And these are the types of sheet piles used. One is cantilever, other one is anchored and is propped. This is a diagram representation of the sheet pile walls. Next we are going to see about the deep excavation. From the name itself we can know that the excavation of trenches which required side supports and dewatering is known as deep excavation. It's used in case of the ordinary excavation and no support is required to support the side of the trenches, and no water is met with during the process of excavation. This process of excavation is entirely dependent upon the type of soil. If the soil is firm and hard, the depth of excavation is somewhat less. If the soil is loose and soft means the depth of excavation will be more. The excavation beyond the depth of 1.5 meters generally treated as a deep excavation. If the depth is somewhat below the 1.5 meter, it will be not treated as a depth excavation. Now we are going to see the problems that are faced in the deep excavations. The prevention of the collapsing side of the trench will be problem. It is the main problem that is faced, and it can be solved by adapting a suitable method of timbering. The prevention of the water ozoning or coming out from the sides of the bottom of the trench, and it can be solved by applying a suitable method of dewatering the trenches. And now we are going to see about the timbering of trenches. The timbering of trenches can be done by stay bracing, box sheeting, vertical sheeting, runners, and sheet piling. Now we are going to see about the dewatering of foundation excavations. Dewatering is nothing but to the removal of water is known as dewatering. So the process of removing the water from the trench is known as dewatering, and these are methods that are adapted to dewater deep excavations. First one is sump and ditches. Next one is well point system. Third one is deep well system. Fourth one is vacuum method. Fifth one is cement grouting. Sixth one is chemical process, and the final one is electro-osmosis process. These are the methods that are adapted for the deep dewatering of the foundation excavations. The next one is tile flooring. As we all know that the tiles are the precast units of pottery or cement concrete or terrazzo. They are produced in the shape of square, polygonal, rectangle, and various other shapes and sizes and thickness. These precast units of terrazzo tiles is known as the mosaic tiles. These tiles are made of pottery known as white glaze tiles, and is mostly used in residential buildings, office buildings, hotel, etc. And white glaze tiles are commonly used in bathrooms, kitchens, swimming pools. And the advantages of the tiles are the floor is non-absorbent, it's good looking and give a decorative color, it's durable, and the maintenance is also easy. If there is any advantage, there will be some disadvantage also. It is very costly, and the maintenance cost is high. It provides a slippery surface, and the skill labors are required to place the types of tiles. And the next one is ceramic tiles. It's one of the most durable floor and wall material that easy to care for it and available in hundreds of styles, variety of shapes, sizes and colors. It is made up of clay, and the thickness of the layer is thin very often, so the value of the neglected relative to the thicknesses of the tiles. Now we are going to see about the properties of the ceramic tiles. The first property is temperature. The ceramic tile is cold when used as a flooring and can be quite uncomfortable during winter time in colder seasons. Because of the density of ceramic, it takes longer to heat or cool than other flooring materials. The second one is hardness. While most consider the hardness of ceramic to be an added value, there is also a downside. Because of the ceramic material has no flexibility, the ceramic itself is more prone than other floor types to surface cracking when heavy items are dropped. The third property is durability. Saying about the durability, the ceramic tiles are very durable and they are lighter than porcelain or real stone tile flooring. If properly installed, the ceramic flooring will last for more than 20 years. And the suitability is another property of the ceramic tiles. The ceramic flooring is very easy to maintain. It's somewhat smooth and non-porous, and because of its durability and resistance to moisture. Now we are going to see the use of the ceramic tiles. It's extremely versatile, so it can be used in almost any room in the home. It's often mostly used in bathrooms and kitchens, and it's not preferred to use in public buildings. Now we are going to see about the advantages of the ceramic tiles. It's strong, it's very durable material, it's resistant to salts and sulfurs, it doesn't absorb colors and stains, the maintenance will be somewhat less, it's somewhat inexpensive, it does not require polishing or after installation, it is resistant to chemicals, moisture and bacterial resistant, and it's also a fire resistant. Now we are going to see about the disadvantages of the ceramic tile. If the tile is cracked or broken, it will be difficult to replace. So the replacement is somewhat difficult. So while placing, it should be carefully placed. And it's hard and cold underfoot. These types of tiles are somewhat delicate during installation. And now we are going to see about the terrazzo tiles. It is a composite material either poured in, placed or precast or hydraulically pressed as a tiles, and is used for floors and wall decorators finishes. In this terrazzo file, it consists of marble, quartz, granite, glass, and other suitable chips, sprinkled or non-sprinkled. It will be poured as a binder, and that is cementitious, chemical, and a combination of both. And the terrazzo is cured, ground and polished to a smooth surface, and finished to produce a uniformly textured surface. Now we are going to see about the advantages of terrazzo. The advantage of terrazzo, besides its beauty, is in fact it lasts for centuries. It's a versatile one, so it can install inside or outside anywhere we can install. So the terrazzo healthy because of its primarily from stone. It's healthy and it's bacteria resistant. And the terrazzo has unlimited design possibilities also. And finally, we are going to see about the material of finish for commercial and industrial floors. In the commercial and industrial floors, some of the materials are used for the finishing. In that, fly ash or slag cement is mostly used and commonly appears in the commercial or industrial floors. These materials are called as supplementary cemental materials or pozzolanas and have various purposes as a cement replacement. The material sometimes used for the commercial and industrial floor is another one is expansive cement, which we can also known as the shrinkage compacting cement. These compacting cements expand slightly while settling then shrinkage back to its original size. So it's also a materials used for the commercial and industrial flows. The next one is a hot wear resisting aggregate. It will consist of quartz, emery and trap rocks, as well as a malleable metallic hardness, and they are frequently used as a surface treatment in commercial and industrial flows. So these sort of aggregates also used, and the cement, expansive cement and the fly ash and slag cements are also used for the finish for the commercial and industrial flows. And this is the end of the video.